So I was standing in the hall of my synagogue and my cell phone rang. And I answered it, and the man on the other end of the phone said, "We'd like to offer you a chance to give the benediction at the Democratic National Convention. Would you like to do that?" The first thing that ran through my mind was, how'd you get my cell phone number? But I said, of course, yes, I would love to. I said, please know, though, I'm a rabbi. I don't do political endorsements. I try to stay out of the political side of this. He goes, we know. We've done our background check. I thought, that's how you got my cell phone number. And he said, this is the plan. Clinton, on the night before the president speaks, ex-President Clinton is going to speak, and then we'll have you come up and do the benediction. I said, great. So I flew out to Charlotte, where the convention was taking place. The day before, they called me and they said, listen, we have a slight change of plans. Instead of speaking right after President Clinton, we'd like you to speak after the roll call. I said, fine. I didn't know what the roll call was. Let me tell you what the roll call is. After President Clinton finished speaking, every delegation from every state gets up and says, the great state of whatever, home of, everything from like corn to college football to the Keystone State, offers their delegates for President Obama, and they name the number of delegates and everybody cheers, and then they leave. So I started off at like 10 o'clock at night with an auditorium of 5,000 people. And one by one, or more like hundreds by hundreds, they left. And I'm standing there watching each state announce and go. And let me tell you, there are a lot of states. Because I started getting messages on my phone, wanted to see you, but really have to go to sleep, Sorry, we're going to miss you. And even the guys backstage started to feel bad for me because it was now midnight and the states were still leaving and the auditorium was almost empty. And they were saying, look, it'll always be online. People will always be able to, these are the tech guys, comforting the rabbi who's seeing everybody leave. So part of it was that there was some personal pain because, I grew up in Pennsylvania. And when Pennsylvania left, I wanted to say, how could you do this to me? Granted that nobody says, ooh, I'm going to watch the convention to see the benedictions, but still, we got to close to the end, somewhere between Wisconsin and Wyoming. And the only person that was still there on the stage was the chairman of the convention, the mayor of Los Angeles, whom I knew, Antonio Villaraigosa, and his son, Antonio Jr., who was a college student. So I walked over to Antonio Jr. and I said to him, by the time I'm ready to give the benediction, the only people listening will be you and me and the maintenance staff. And he said, and God. And it completely changed me. Because I all of a sudden realized that I had been so wrapped up in the number of people that were going to hear me and the ego of my performance of giving a benediction that I actually forgot that I was supposed to give a benediction and that it was supposed to be a prayer. And suddenly, I was entirely turned around, and where I had been depressed, now I was elevated, and where I had been upset and felt put upon, I felt privileged. And it got me thinking again about something that I think about all the time, which is all of you, everyone, has experienced people saying things to them that change their lives. It can be a parent, a friend, a sibling, a stranger, a spouse, a child. And they say something and you never forget it. Now, sometimes you don't let them know. You may never have gone back to your third-grade teacher and said, you know, that thing you said to me, I never forgot it. Changed my life. But it did. And you must know that if other people have said things that have changed your life, that you have the power to say things that will change other people's lives. And part of that power is knowing what sort of things and in what situations you can say those things that will change lives. So let me tell you a story. There was a rabbi in England. A lot of my stories involve rabbis. That may surprise you. But there was a rabbi in England named Hugo Grid who, when he was a child, was in concentration camp, was in Auschwitz. And he was there with his father. And it was the time for the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. And his father received that day the margarine ration, a very small amount that they used to get every day that barely kept them alive. And instead of eating it, he used it as oil to light the candle for the Hanukkah menorah. And his son was outraged. And he said to him, how can you do this? This is what we live on. This is our food. And his father said something to him that he never forgot all his days. He said, my son, we have learned in this camp that you can live for 3 days without water. You can live for 3 weeks without food, but you can't live for 3 minutes without hope. It changed him. He realized that the receiving of hope, the giving of hope, was the essential task that he had as a human being, and it determined his life. And if you think about that situation and other situations, you start to get an outline of what it is that happens when you say something that changes someone. First of all, it has to be authentic from the soul of the speaker. They have to say what they know, what they believe. You have to feel that what this person is saying is true. The person who receives it has to be in a receptive state, and that usually means what sociologists call a liminal state, moving from one thing to another. You have to be open through anguish, through pain, through joy, through fear, through anxiety, something that allows you to hear because you need something to come in, to be received, to bolster you, to inspire you, to uplift you. And also, it has to be something that is expansive, that changes your view of the world, that explodes or expands the way you see things so that all of a sudden you see them anew. It turns your perspective around. It makes life bigger, which is always part of the solution for any narrowness, depression, upset, tragedy, is to make life bigger, because it is always bigger than what we can see. And those sorts of things will enable us not only to be changed, but to change. You think sometimes you should be able to do it for yourself, but there is a beautiful story in the Talmud about a rabbi who goes around curing all these other people, and then himself is sick, and when they ask why can't he cure himself, the answer is because the prisoner can't free himself from jail. And when you have the bars in front of you, you need someone else to reach in and pull you out. One last story. This story concerns a rabbi who died not that long ago. His name was Shlomo Carlebach. He used to travel around the world. And when he did, what he would do is he would sing, and he wrote many songs, and he used to elevate communities with prayer and with meditation and with song. And once he traveled to a community in the former Soviet Union, a little town, a border town. And there he came and he discovered that everybody in the town, either literally or metaphorically, closed the door in his face. They weren't interested in this singing rabbi from the West. They didn't want to listen to him. They didn't want to talk to him except for one man. There was one man who was open and welcoming and wonderful, and at the end of spending the Sabbath with him, Carlebach pulled him aside and he said, listen, I must ask you a question. He said, I understand the people of this town. I know they went through Nazism and then the jackboot of communism, and with the collapse of the Soviet Union, a whole new series of hardships. I know why they aren't open to my message and my song. What I don't understand, said Carlebach, is you. What makes you so different? And the man said, well, I can tell you what makes me different, and I can tell you exactly when it happened. Look, he said, I am an old man, and I have lived in this town my entire life. And I remember when I was a child, back before the First World War, in the middle of winter, a rumor swept through the town that the Cossacks were coming. And they were going to rape and loot and pillage and destroy. And so all the parents from the town gathered up all the children. And they brought us to the rabbi's house. And there all night long, as we slept on the floors of the rabbi's house, he paced up and down, watching out over the children as the parents watched in anxiety from their homes. And in the middle of the night, I was curled up in a corner of the rabbi's study, pretending to sleep, but I couldn't sleep because it was bitter cold. And from behind me came the rabbi. And he took his cloak off his shoulders, and he spread it over me, and he said, good child, sweet child. You know, said the man to Carlebach, it has been 75 years since the rabbi spread his coat on me, but it still keeps me warm. That moment tells us what we need to know. That you have the power to do that for another human being, to change their world and change their life. And realize that you create, in part, the reality that you see. By seeing that child as good and sweet and saying it, the rabbi sweetened his life forever, made him different, even as an old man, from everyone else around him. And here is the final and most powerful point, which is if you do this for someone else, if you expand their world, if you speak from your heart, if you elevate their soul, then you give them a story that they can tell about how their life was changed, and therefore you change lives in infinite ripples throughout time, which means that when you spread that coat on someone, you can keep lots and lots and lots of people warm. Good luck.